What if I told you that almost everything you do today was decided before you even woke up? Not by fate, not by some mysterious force, but by the invisible machinery running inside your own mind. Welcome to the strange, fascinating, and sometimes unsettling world of human psychology. Let's begin with a simple question. Why do you do what you do? You probably think you know. You make choices, you have reasons, you are in control. But science tells a very different story. Meet the two systems inside your brain. Psychologist Daniel Kahneman called them System 1 and System 2. System 1 is fast, automatic, emotional. It runs in the background, making thousands of tiny decisions every second. System 2 is slow, logical, deliberate. It's the voice in your head that says, "Wait, let me think about this." Here's the uncomfortable truth. System 1 is in charge about 90% of the time. You think you're driving the car, but most of the time, the car is driving itself. This is why you reach for your phone without deciding to. This is why you feel nervous in a quiet room full of strangers. This is why you buy things you don't need because a sale sign said 50% off. Your brain is running shortcuts called cognitive biases, and there are over 180 of them documented by researchers. Let's talk about one of the most powerful, the confirmation bias. Your brain desperately wants to be right. So it searches for information that confirms what it already believes and quietly ignores everything that doesn't. You don't change your mind when you see new evidence. You change the evidence to fit your mind. This is why two people can watch the same news broadcast and walk away with completely opposite conclusions. Now let's go deeper into the story of who you think you are. Psychologists call it the self-concept. It's the narrative you've built about yourself. I am a kind person. I am bad at math. I am someone who doesn't give up. But here's the strange part. That story was mostly written by other people. Your parents, your teachers, your first friends, the culture you grew up in. By the time you were 7 years old, the foundation of your personality was already being set in concrete. And yet, you walk around feeling like you freely chose who you are. There's a concept called the looking glass self, developed by sociologist Charles Cooley. The idea is simple but devastating. You see yourself through the eyes of others. You become who you think people think you are, not who you actually are, not who you could be, but the reflection in other people's reactions. This is why a single cruel comment from a teacher can echo in someone's mind for 30 years, and why a moment of genuine praise can change the direction of a life. Let's talk about behavior in groups, because humans are deeply, fundamentally social creatures. In 1963, a psychologist named Stanley Milgram ran one of the most disturbing experiments in history. He asked ordinary people to administer electric shocks to a stranger whenever they answered a question wrong. The shocks were fake, but the participants didn't know that, and 65% of them kept pressing the button all the way to the maximum level, simply because a man in a white coat told them to. They weren't monsters. They were ordinary people, people like you and me. The experiment revealed something terrifying about human nature. We are wired to obey authority, even when it conflicts with our own conscience, even when it hurts someone else. A few years later, Philip Zimbardo ran the Stanford Prison experiment. He divided students randomly into guards and prisoners in a fake jail. Within 6 days, the guards became cruel, the prisoners became broken, normal people transformed into something unrecognizable simply because of the roles they were given. The situation shapes the person, far more than we want to believe, but it's not all dark. Human psychology is also the story of extraordinary resilience. Viktor Frankl survived the Nazi concentration camps and wrote that the last of human freedoms is the ability to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. You cannot always control what happens to you, but you can control the meaning you give it. This is the foundation of modern therapy. Cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, is built on one radical idea. Your thoughts are not facts. You can observe them, question them, rewrite them. The brain is not fixed. It is plastic. It changes. Every time you learn something new, every time you challenge a fear, every time you choose a different response, you are literally rewiring the neural pathways in your brain. This is called neuroplasticity, and it means that change is always possible. Let's talk about motivation. Why do humans do anything at all? Psychologist Abraham Maslow proposed a hierarchy of needs. At the base, survival, food, water, shelter, then safety, then love and belonging, then esteem, and at the very top, self-actualization, the desire to become everything you are capable of becoming. But here's what most people miss about Maslow. You don't climb the pyramid once and stay there. You fall back down, lose your job, and suddenly belonging feels less important than security. Lose a relationship and the whole structure shakes. We are constantly moving up and down this ladder every single day. Now let's talk about something that controls more of your behavior than almost anything else. Emotion. For a long time, scientists thought emotion and reason were opposites, that to think clearly, you had to remove emotion from the equation. But neuroscientist Antonio Damasio studied patients with damage to the emotional centers of their brain. These people could think perfectly clearly. They could analyze any situation logically, but they couldn't make decisions. Because without emotion, nothing felt important. Nothing felt worth choosing. Emotion is not the enemy of reason. It is the fuel. Without it, the engine doesn't start. And finally, let's talk about the deepest question in all of psychology. Are you free? Do you actually have free will? Or are you just a very complicated machine responding to inputs? Neuroscientist Benjamin Libet ran experiments showing that the brain begins preparing for an action about half a second before you consciously decide to do it. Your brain starts moving before you tell it to. Does that mean free will is an illusion? Maybe. Or maybe the most meaningful freedom isn't the freedom to act without cause. Maybe it's the freedom to notice, to pause, to ask why, to choose, even slightly differently than the pattern that was set for you. That pause. That tiny space between stimulus and response. That is where the whole of human psychology lives. That is where you live. Not in the automatic reactions, not in the biases and the echoes of old voices, but in the moment when you stop and you ask, who am I really? And what do I actually want to do next? The study of human psychology is ultimately the study of that question. And the beautiful, terrifying, wonderful truth is that the question never fully gets answered. Because you are always becoming, you are never finished. And that, perhaps, is the most human thing of all.